and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. The nation's highest court made two big decisions today on the Biden administration's vaccine mandates. The Supreme Court blocked the administration's vaccine mandates on private businesses and upheld the vaccine mandate for healthcare workers. Senate Democrats are poised to reject Senator Ted Cruz's bill to sanction Russia's Nord Stream 2 pipeline. We spoke to Senator Cruz, who tells us this was among the most consequential votes the Senate has taken in the past 10 years. Justice Department issues the first seditious conspiracy charges related to the January 6th Capitol breach. Among the 11 defendants charged is the leader of the Oath Keepers, who was arrested by the FBI this morning. Student loan servicer company Navient reached a settlement with 39 states over allegations of misleading students during student loan debt repayment processes. Navient has agreed to pay $1.7 billion in student loan cancellations. The NCAA has made a big update to its vaccine policy. It's got people asking if the tide's changing now that a large American sports organization considers natural immunity and fully vaccinated as one and the same. President Biden today said he's unsure if his administration could push Democrats' voting bills through Congress, but that he'll continue trying. He met with Senate Democrats behind closed doors on the bills.
I don't know that we can get it done, but I know one thing. As long as I have a breath in me, as long as I'm in the White House, as long as I'm engaged at all, I'm going to be fighting to change the way these legislatures have moving. Thank you.
The House passed the voting bills along party lines earlier today, but they would need 60 votes to pass in the Senate because of the filibuster. Top Senate Democrats want to change the chamber's procedural rules and bring the bills to debate by bypassing the filibuster. But it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. Democratic Senator Kyrsten Sinema says that she cannot support what she calls a short-sighted rules change. She says the filibuster protects our country from wild reversals in federal policy and that getting rid of it would worsen the underlying disease of division infecting our country. And as Russian troops hover over the Ukraine border, senators on Capitol Hill are voting on a bill sponsored by Republican Senator Ted Cruz to slap sanctions on Russia's Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline. The vote comes a day after Democrats unveiled their own legislation. NTD's Melina Wisecup has updates for us from the Capitol. Melina, how did this vote unfold today?
Well, the Senate is still tallying up those votes right now, and it's going to be a close call. I spoke with Senator Ted Cruz, the author of this bill, earlier, and he says he's worried that if the Senate doesn't pass it tonight, it could send a message of weakness to Putin and embolden him to further encroach on Ukraine.
I believe it substantially increases the odds of a Russian invasion of Ukraine, of in just weeks or months, the possibility of our seeing Russian tanks in the streets of Kiev. The reason Putin has not invaded Ukraine entirely to date is because Putin needs the Ukrainian energy infrastructure. Right now, Putin sends his natural gas through Ukraine to get to Europe. If Nord Stream 2 goes online, it goes around Ukraine, and he can march the troops in, he can drive the tanks in.
President Biden single-handedly waived these sanctions in May with the goal to mend relations with Germany, a decision that even Democrats were critical of at the time. But the White House this week rallied Democrats to get back in line. One argument against the bill is that it would do more harm than good, harming U.S.-Germany relations. What would you say to the argument that this bill would hurt U.S.-Germany relations?
Well, if you look at where Europe is, the government of Ukraine has repeatedly pleaded with the United States Senate to pass these sanctions. The Prime Minister of Ukraine, the President of Ukraine have both explicitly said, pass the Nord Stream 2 sanctions now to protect them from a vital threat of invasion. Poland, likewise, the government of Poland is begging the Senate to pass these sanctions. You know, the European Parliament voted on Nord Stream 2. The vote was 585 to 50. 585 to condemn, to stop the Nord Stream 2 to just 50. And so the Biden White House has a talking point. They say we should have transatlantic unity, but they're arguing that we should stand with the 50 against the 585. That doesn't make any sense.
Democrats who voted down Cruz's bill spoke on the floor in agreement of the need to hold Russia accountable for their troop buildup on the Ukraine border. But Biden urged Democrats to oppose Cruz's bill and instead rally behind a competing bill across the aisle from Senator Bob Menendez. Menendez's bill would uphold Biden's strategy to sanction Russia only if the troops invade. And White House officials wrapped up talks with Russian officials, but yet again, those talks didn't yield any major breakthroughs. And one U.S. official involved with those talks says that we should be taking the escalation from Russian troops seriously because he says the drumbeat of war is sounding loud. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Senators are proposing bills that would ban Congress members from trading stocks while in office. A recent poll shows that the overwhelming majority of voters, both Democrats and Republicans, support such a ban. NTD interviewed the president of one of the organizations that conducted the poll.
The bill by Democrat Senators John Ossoff of Georgia and Mark Kelly of Arizona would require all members of Congress and their families to place their stock portfolios into blind trusts. This would give control over the portfolio to a third party or trustee who would manage the assets without input from the owners.
Somebody like Nancy Pelosi can literally make statements in public, and those statements will cause the price of a variety of stocks to go up or down. If she says we're looking at regulating the social media industry, that will have an effect on that industry. So she actually has the ability to have a direct effect on an industry and set up trades in advance that will benefit from the things that she says publicly.
In a December poll by Convention of States Action, 76% of voters say that Congress members shouldn't be allowed to trade stocks while in office, and that they have an unfair advantage. Only 5% say it's perfectly fine. The majority of voters from both parties support the ban, 69% of Democrats and 78% of Republicans. The president of Convention of States Action says the public pressure is strong.
I think it's very difficult to know, almost impossible to prove whether they're actually trading on inside information. So this would just simply be a blanket prohibition on trading individual stocks, which most Americans believe is the appropriate methodology for people who are in Congress.
The Stock Act of 2012 already bans insider trading, but this new bill in the Senate would have tougher restrictions and penalties. Members who violate the ban would be fined their entire congressional salaries.
Yeah, I think Congress will be against it generally, but I think that the public pressure will be enough that ultimately they ought to be able to pass it. If they don't, I think the Republicans will run on the passage of this bill, and it will help them in the 2022 elections.
The two Senate Democrats also cited the poll by Convention of States Action to show that their bill would enjoy public support. Republican Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri is introducing a similar bill.
The Supreme Court has blocked the Biden administration's COVID-19 vaccine mandate for private businesses. But they decided to uphold the vaccine mandate for healthcare workers. NTD's Jason Perry has the story.
The nation's highest court made two big decisions on Thursday about the Biden administration's vaccine mandates. The vote was 6-3 to block the mandate on private businesses with 100 or more employees. Justices Breyer, Sotomayor, and Kagan dissented. Constitutional expert and the founder of PatriotAcademy.com, Rick Green, says this is not the final decision on the mandates.
And what the Supreme Court's saying is, based on what we see so far, we think that the employers are probably going to win, Daily Wire and the other plaintiffs in this case, and therefore we're going to make the government hold off on implementing their order.
Now the case will go back to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit. The second ruling on Thursday affects healthcare workers. In a 5-4 vote, the Supreme Court allowed the Biden administration to enforce its separate vaccine requirement for healthcare facilities that participate in Medicare or Medicaid. This will require about 10 million workers to be vaccinated without a weekly testing option. Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Kavanaugh joined the three liberal justices in the opinion.
And so they put together like 5 different statutes out there, and they kind of meshed them all together and said, based on all these different things that Congress did, We think Congress says we can have a vaccine mandate. And what Thomas very clearly says in his dissent, Alito as well, and Gorsuch is, no. You're stringing all this stuff together. You're trying to connect all these dots that don't connect, and you're creating a new power for this agency that Congress never intended.
Green says the Supreme Court's ruling isn't going to solve the bigger issue of federal overreach.
So the problem with what the Supreme Court done is here, while they've given a further stay to these employers, they've essentially emboldened the federal government to continue to try to run our lives instead of letting us make these decisions at the local level.
The cases involving the health care mandate will now go back to appeals court for disposition. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Some researchers in the U.S. put in a lot of work last year trying to validate the natural protection you get after recovering from COVID-19. To their disappointment, the country's fallen behind other nations in this respect. But the tide may be turning. The NCAA is now also giving athletes a fully vaccinated status if they've recovered from the infection. NTD's Miguel Moreno reports.
America's top health agency gives the fully vaccinated status only to people who've gotten the shot. But the National Collegiate Athletic Association, known as the NCAA, is deviating from that guideline by giving the same status to the unvaccinated if they've been infected with COVID-19. The association's updated winter sports guidance says a person who has had a documented COVID-19 infection in the past 90 days is considered the equivalent of fully vaccinated.
The guidance needs to reflect the practical reality.
Gerald Comisiong is the CEO of Todos Medical, a COVID-19 test maker.
Do you think that the NCAA is headed in the right direction by considering people with natural immunity as fully vaccinated?
Yes, absolutely. It's very clear that people who get the virus can develop immunity. That's, the way every virus in the history of mankind has worked. And so it does make sense that there should start to be a recognition of natural immunity, especially in the face of Omicron. The big issue, of course, is that the vaccines are targeted at the ancestral strain that no longer exists. And their effectiveness has gone down with each subsequent strain, with their effectiveness now going down the most against Omicron. So in fact, people who've had Omicron are more likely to have protection against the variant that's circulating now than those who are vaccinated.
Now that the NCAA has done this, do you think other agencies or organizations in the sports realm will do the same?
I think the whole country is going to do the same. Because there's no choice. And it's, the reality is it's exactly like guidelines elsewhere in the world.
Some European nations, for example, have for a long time considered natural immunity and vaccine-generated antibodies one and the same. But the NCAA's policy says athletes will be considered fully vaccinated after infection only for about 3 months. Yet studies have found that effective natural immunity can last for at least 6 months. Comisiong says that the NCAA should expand its policy, that instead of limiting the fully vaccinated status to 3 months, it should test players for antibodies. This way, the organization will know whether the players have the antibodies necessary to protect against the disease. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
The Justice Department has issued the first seditious conspiracy charges related to the January 6th Capitol breach. In an indictment that was unsealed today, the DOJ brought a variety of charges against the leader of the Oath Keepers, along with 10 other defendants. Here are the details.
11 people have been charged by the DOJ with seditious conspiracy in the January 6th Capitol breach, including leader of the Oath Keepers, Stuart Rhodes, who was arrested Thursday morning. The new indictment alleges that Rhodes conspired with his co-defendants and others to oppose by force the lawful transfer of presidential power. According to the indictment, one Oath Keeper claimed to travel to Washington, D.C. to scout the area in advance of January 6th. Prosecutors allege that Rhodes and his alleged co-conspirators used encrypted messaging to plan and coordinate their actions prior to and on January 6th. This includes discussions on obtaining and bringing weapons to the Washington area. The defendants allegedly brought paramilitary gear, knives, batons, camouflage uniforms, helmets, and radios to the Capitol grounds on January 6th. According to the indictment, at around 1:40 p.m., when protesters had already begun to break through barricades and climbed onto the West Capitol steps, Rhodes allegedly said on the Signal app, "All I see Trump doing is complaining. I see no intent by him to do anything. So the patriots are taking it into their own hands. They've had enough." Rhodes is not accused of entering the Capitol building, but allegedly entered a restricted area surrounding it. He had previously denied urging the Oath Keepers to storm the building and said he believes it was wrong for members of the group to do so. The DOJ said in late December that at least 725 defendants have been arrested in connection with January 6th, and that over 225 had been charged with assaulting or impeding law enforcement officers.
Abuse of power. That's what GOP leader Kevin McCarthy is calling the January 6th probe. He held a news conference today after refusing to cooperate with the panel. NTD's Iris Tao has more.
Never did I think a speaker would play such politics.
Kevin McCarthy is doubling down on his refusal to work with the January 6th committee. The House Minority Leader said on Thursday he has no new information to give to a politicized investigation.
There is nothing that I can provide the January 6th committee for legislation of them moving forward. There is nothing in that realm. It is pure politics of what they're playing.
This comes after the committee on Wednesday asked him to voluntarily hand over information, including about former President Donald Trump's mental state during and after the Capitol breach. The committee also asked about the content of a January 6 call McCarthy had with Trump. The California Republican refused, saying in a Wednesday statement that the panel, which is absent of GOP-appointed members, is illegitimate and an abuse of power. He added on Thursday that he made public long ago what was in the call.
My conversation was very short, advising the president of what was happening here.
Meanwhile,
yes, I think he has an obligation as we seek the truth.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is urging McCarthy to cooperate with the probe, but stops short of endorsing a potential subpoena.
Up to the committee as to what they do next.
This as Liz Cheney, vice chair of the January 6th committee, told CNN that issuing subpoenas to sitting lawmakers for refusing to cooperate is not off the table.
He's clearly trying to cover up what happened. He has an obligation to come forward, and we'll get to the truth.
McCarthy is the third Republican to decline the committee's request for cooperation. Ohio Representative Jim Jordan and Pennsylvania Representative Scott Perry have both declined similar requests. Iris Tao, NTD News.
For people drowning in student loan debt, the repayment process can be lengthy and filled with unexpected changes. Last month, President Biden extended the loan repayment pause. And now Navient, one of the nation's largest student loan servicer companies, has agreed to pay billions in student debt cancellation. Here's NTD's Cynthia Kai with the details.
5 years ago, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB, filed the first lawsuit against student loan servicer Navient, alleging deceptive practices toward students. Navient is now agreeing to pay billions in student debt cancellation.
Navient will cancel $1.7 billion in debt for more than 66,000 people nationwide and provide another 350,000 borrowers who were manipulated into forbearances with $95 million in restitution.
The settlement, joined by 39 state attorneys general, was announced on Thursday to resolve a long-standing lawsuit against Navient. Multiple states' attorneys general highlighted the issue of forbearance.
Navient, as Josh, as you pointed out, sort of promised to help these borrowers. And all they got when they contacted Navient was a push into a bad plan, this forbearance plan, which was bad for borrowers because all that did was tack on interest on top of interest.
CFPB filed the lawsuit on January 18, 2017, claiming that Navient engaged in unfair practices by steering student loan borrowers into forbearances and away from federal student loan relief or forgiveness programs.
As part of our investigation and litigation, we uncovered and alleged that Navient, operating as Sallie Mae, made private predatory loans to students attending for-profit colleges. Students who Navient knew would not be able to repay.
However, despite the settlement, Navient denies all charges, insisting there is no evidence to substantiate the allegations. Jack Raimondi, Navient's chief executive, said in an interview with the Washington Post, "This is really about eliminating a time-consuming, distracting, and costly process. With the ability to explicitly deny the claims that were made in these cases and borrowers harm, I think it's noteworthy that we are not giving up on our defense here. We're just agreeing that it's time to move on."
As a result of today's settlement, Navient must ensure that its call agents discuss the benefits of income-driven repayment with all borrowers seeking to lower or stop their payments. They need to create a new cadre of repayment specialists who are trained to advise at-risk borrowers.
Navient will notify eligible loan borrowers of their loan cancellation by July. It will also notify credit reporting bureaus of the canceled loans.
If you're eligible, you won't need to do anything to receive this relief. It will come to you. Payments will be sent in the mail to eligible federal loan borrowers later this year once the settlement is approved.
The agreement was filed Thursday in the U.S. District Court of the Middle District of Pennsylvania and is awaiting court approval. Cynthia Kai, NTD News.
California Governor Gavin Newsom today rejected efforts to release Sirhan from prison. Sirhan is the man who assassinated Senator Robert F. Kennedy in 1968. Newsom said Mr. Sirhan lacks the insight that would prevent him from making the same types of dangerous decisions he made in the past. The Kennedy family says they are grateful and relieved by the governor's decision. And up next, a man was robbed and beaten by a stranger in New York City after trying to help him. We show you the shocking surveillance video. And in Virginia, a teenager was sentenced for committing sexual assault at 2 separate high schools. And in a rare move for juvenile cases, the judge ordered him to be placed on the sex offender registry. Find out more here on NTD News. When you see a homeless person, is your first thought to keep a safe distance, or do you get the urge to help? In New York City, a man wanted to help, and it cost him his wallet. NTD's Arian Pazdar shows us the video from the Big Apple.
In this clip published by NBC, you can see Xavier Israel of Ohio sleeping on the streets of New York this week when temperatures were freezing. A Good Samaritan saw him and took off his coat to cover Xavier with it. That's when he got up and started attacking the man. Xavier then stole his wallet and punched him in the face when he tried getting it back. The Ohio native was later arrested. He already had 2 arrests in the past month, both of them assaults. Unprovoked attacks are nothing new, but violent crime is going up in New York City. I spoke with the president of Intercessors for America to find out why that is.
Police officers are discouraged to enforce the law, and then prosecutors are not prosecuting criminals. This is what you get.
When you see such an attack, you might get discouraged from helping people in need. But Mr. Kubal says that America has a biblical heritage which encourages people to be generous to their fellows, and he hopes that heritage will be upheld.
I really hope and pray that if and when people see this video, that they would not be discouraged to stop giving as much as they would be encouraged to emphasize police enforcement and criminal enforcement.
The attacker from Ohio is expected to be arraigned this week. Arian Pastar, NTD News, New York.
A teenager convicted of 2 sexual assaults at Loudoun County high schools was sentenced on Wednesday. And in a rare move for juvenile cases, the judge ordered him to be placed on the sex offender registry. NTD's Chenny Wu has more.
The 15-year-old boy was sentenced Wednesday to probation at a residential treatment facility until his 18th birthday in 2024. His name has not been released because of his age. Judge Pamela L. Brooks also ordered him to be placed on the sex offender registry. Brooks said it's the first time she's made such an order in a juvenile case, but it's after she reviewed the boy's psychosexual and psychological evaluations. The judge said the evaluations scared her and that the defendant needed a lot of help. The plaintiff's attorney, Elizabeth Lancaster, said the placement on the sex offender registry was for the protection of the community, not for punishing the boy. The defendant was found guilty on charges of forcible sodomy and forcible fellatio inside a bathroom at Stonebridge High School in May last year. After changing schools, he pleaded no contest to charges of abduction and sexual battery in a separate case at Broad Run High School in November. Scott Smith, father of the first victim, told the Epoch Times,
I want him to come better in the future instead of sit in jail for the rest of his life, but I also want him marked as a sexual predator.
The assaults occurred before and after the county adopted a transgender-friendly policy that would allow boys who self-identified as girls to use girls' bathrooms. Chenny Wu, NTD News.
Prince Andrew's military titles and royal patronages have been returned to the Queen. In a dramatic fallout from his civil sexual assault case, Buckingham Palace announced
the Duke of York will continue not to undertake any public duties and is defending this case as a private citizen.
The
development is a major blow to Andrew, who is facing a court showdown after a judge ruled on Wednesday that Virginia Giuffre's lawsuit against him could go ahead. It comes after more than 150 veterans joined forces to express their outrage, writing to the Queen to demand Andrew was removed from the honorary military positions.
Major League pitcher John Lester retired Wednesday, capping a remarkable 16-year career. But his retirement has quickly sparked debate over whether he'll be elected to the Hall of Fame. NTD's Dave Martin has more.
John Lester won exactly 200 games, made 5 All-Star teams, and was at his best on the game's biggest stage, winning 3 World Series. His free agent signing with the Cubs was one of the most important in franchise history, paving the way for them to win their first World Series in over 100 years. And he did this after surviving cancer as a rookie, making him a fan favorite for life. But will he make the Hall of Fame? That's the debate that's already started. Chris Botting, author at Cooperstown Cred, a website about Hall of Fame candidates, tweeted, he'll get more play for the Hall of Fame than your typical 44.3 wins above replacement pitcher. This is a popular sentiment given that Lester was at his best in the postseason with a 2.51 ERA and 154 playoff innings. One comparison to that kind of resume would be Curt Schilling, who had significantly better regular season totals, but was also a postseason hero. Schilling fell just short of the Hall in the most recent election. Bob Vorwald, author of 3 Chicago baseball books, tweeted another common sentiment. I have no problem if you put John Lester in the Hall of Fame, but he would have to have lots of company, including Billy Pierce and Mark Burley. Lester will be on the Hall of Fame ballot in 5 years, and though he'll have 10 tries to get the 75% vote needed, it seems like a long shot, with players like Burley and Andy Pettitte still waiting for the call. Dave Martin, NTD News, New York.
Coming up, some Californians are split when it comes to the state's solar energy metering system. The solar energy industry may shift if this new proposal is adopted. And the California Department of Motor Vehicles told Tesla it'll be revisiting its previous decision to not require the car company to submit self-driving data to the agency. That and more when we return.
Travel for K Original, Jola Namdo. The moment your 5 senses awaken, K Culture. The taste of Jola Namdo leads to the world, K Food. An exhilarating memory that I will cherish. There's no end to happiness, K Life. A great place to truly enjoy traveling, K Travel, Jola Namdo.
It's just clear as day. The media, whether it's broadcast, cable, or print media, has become extremely biased. And I started looking online for alternative ways to get information. And I saw an ad for a free trial. And I looked at it and I said, Epoch Times. I mean, come on, this is end of days type of stuff. I mean, what are they going to be talking about here? And I said, well, it's a free trial. Let me dig in. Is it giving me both sides? Is it giving me an objective point of view here? I have looked for opportunities to see where they might be biased, and I don't find it. It has given me a level of trust in media that I didn't think I'd ever get back. I love the Epoch Times because it has renewed my faith in the idea that a reliable, responsible, non-biased source of information is available. And I can say that I love it because of that.
The 2022 NTD 8th International Chinese Vocal Competition will be held at the Merkin Hall of Kaufman Music Center in New York City. The competition is honored to have specially invited vocalists with the world-renowned Shen Yun Performing Arts to serve on its panel of judges. The gold award is $10,000. The 2022 8th International Chinese Vocal Competition. For more information, please visit vocal.ntdtv.com.
Four California district attorneys and families of fentanyl overdose victims are raising awareness of the impacts the drug is having on their local areas. NTD's Jason Blair reports.
On Wednesday, four California district attorneys, along with families of fentanyl poisoning victims, raised awareness of the impact the opiate is having in their local communities.
We are doing everything we can conceivably do to raise the alarm that this is, in fact, an epidemic.
Anne Marie Schubert, the Sacramento County DA, said that 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be fatal for most adults, which is about the size of 2 grains of salt. In her county, she reported 157 deaths from homicide with a gun compared to 198 fentanyl-related deaths during 2020 and 2021.
These are not the drugs of the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, where it took a significant time period or it took numerous uses to cause destructive and fatal consequences for the user.
All the DAs reported a steady increase in fentanyl confiscation and deaths over the past couple of years. They are urging for increased education to the public and accountability for dealers. Fentanyl has been gaining more attention recently as being deadlier than more well-known opiates like heroin and Oxycontin. A retired DEA agent told NTD's Capitol Report that Americans are being targeted with fentanyl by criminal organizations that can be traced back to the Chinese Communist Party.
The Mexican cartels have formed a deadly partnership with the Chinese transnational criminals, and they're bombing our country with this chemical weapon called fentanyl. And the fentanyl is not only mixed in methamphetamine, heroin, and cocaine, but they're making fake pills.
Maltz went on to say that it's one of the many ways the CCP has been using to try to destabilize the United States. Jason Blair, NTD News, California.
A new study from Southern California shows that people infected with Omicron have a less severe illness than those infected with Delta. Here's more from NTD's Eileen Ang.
A preliminary study released on Tuesday revealed that the Omicron variant of the CCP virus, also known as COVID-19, is causing less severe illness than the Delta variant in Southern California. In a sample of about 70,000 patients within the Kaiser Permanente Southern California healthcare system, about 52,000 had Omicron and 17,000 had Delta. They found that those infected with Omicron compared to Delta were 53% less likely to be hospitalized, 74% less likely to be in the intensive care unit, and 91% less likely to die from it. In addition, none of the Omicron patients required mechanical ventilation. In a tweet, the CDC director said, while less severe, Omicron is much more transmissible and we are seeing the unprecedented impact. She still recommends people to get vaccinated, boosted, and wear a mask. The study was conducted between November 30th of last year to January 1st. It was funded by the CDC. It has yet to be peer-reviewed. Eileen Ang, NTD News, California.
And some Californians are divided on a proposal that could change the solar energy industry in the state. The Utilities Commission proposed changes to the energy metering system for rooftop solar panel owners. NTD's David Lamb has that story.
On Thursday morning, hundreds of solar workers rallied and marched in San Francisco, voicing their objection to a new proposal affecting Californians. During an online public comment at the state's Utility Commission meeting, people were divided on the net energy metering system, which would decrease financial benefits for those with rooftop solar panels.
Promoting local solar saves all ratepayers money, whether or not they have solar.
Studies show that rooftop solar reduces the cost of long-distance power lines and can save every ratepayer $300 per year for the next 30 years if we keep it growing.
Opponents say that the changes will deter people from investing in rooftop solar panels. They also said these panels are competition against the large utility companies. Among the supporters of the changes, they say the rooftop solar panels are too costly for low-income families, and some prefer solar farms.
There is no reason to overpay for rooftop solar when we can get utility-scale solar for 1/6 the price and create more and better jobs.
A spokesperson with the Affordable Clean Energy for All Coalition told NTD that the current program hurts Californians who don't own homes, as non-solar owners are paying for the benefits.
Because the way it works is if you have solar panels, these extra credits or subsidies that you get every month for selling your power back to the grid are so generous that in many cases people don't have a utility bill every month.
Tesla CEO Elon Musk has criticized the proposal, calling it an anti-environment move. California officials have ambitious goals for increasing clean energy, such as through solar power. But there are conflicts on how to get there. Earlier this week, the governor has said that there still needs to be work done on the proposal. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
The California DMV is reviewing regulation requirements for Tesla's self-driving features. This comes after a state senator voiced concerns over videos circulating on social media from drivers showing the technology in use. NTD's Jason Blair brings us more.
The California Department of Motor Vehicles recently notified electric car maker Tesla that it will be re-evaluating its self-driving features to see if they fall into the agency's autonomous driving regulations. Currently, the DMV is not requiring Tesla to meet these regulations based on a previous conclusion that Tesla's self-driving features require a human driver. The DMV stated in a letter to California Senator Lina Gonzalez that recent software updates, videos showing dangerous use of that technology, open investigations by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and the opinions of other experts in this space prompted the re-evaluation. Gonzalez is the chair of the California Senate's Transportation Committee and expressed concern to the DMV in December regarding Tesla's full self-driving beta software. Tesla drivers circulated videos on social media platforms showing what the DMV referred to as dangerous use of the technology. If Tesla is required to meet the DMV's autonomous driving regulations, they will have to report crashes and system failures to the agency. Robot car companies like Waymo, Cruise, Argo, and Zoox already fall into this category. Jason Blair, NTD News, California.
Coming up, a virus test each day, an ID scan to leave accommodations, and robot chefs to reduce human contact. These are just a few of the measures that are turning the Beijing Winter Olympics into what some are calling a sealed bubble. And in France, tens of thousands of teachers walked off the job today. That's in response to the government's COVID-19 policies. Some schools had to close because of the strike. More on that in just a moment. The Winter Olympics are fast approaching as athletes from around the world arrive in Beijing. But reports from inside China paint an unexpected picture, an isolation bubble for all visiting foreigners. From the airport onward, they're separated from everyone and everything outside it. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more.
The Beijing Winter Olympics will be held in a what they call closed loop. It's also called a bubble, a sealed and guarded bubble. Once inside, people from other countries cannot leave until they depart the country. The rule applies to all athletes and staff. The loop covers Olympic venues and designated accommodation. And moving between them, participants can only use designated transport. Overseas participants enter the loop the minute they land at the airport in Beijing. Early arrivals say police escorted their buses to their hotels. Everyone in the loop must take a virus test daily. Otherwise, they're forbidden to leave their accommodation because they must show a green code to leave. The green code means they've got a negative virus test within the last 24 hours. food delivery from restaurants outside the loop is not allowed. And in the loop, some of the food is prepared and served by robot chefs. Beijing officials have also warned locals to stay away from designated Olympic transport vehicles in the event of a traffic incident. There are no international spectators allowed at the Beijing Games due to the pandemic. Several European countries are taking steps to protect their athletes during the upcoming Beijing Winter Olympics, and that protection seems to be focused on cybersecurity. British athletes and staff will now be offered temporary phones from the British Olympic Association. The decision comes amid fears that Chinese authorities could install spy software on the foreign devices and gain access to athletes' private data or track their activities. But unlike other nations, athletes and staff from Britain will not be banned from taking their own smartphones and other devices to Beijing if they choose to do so. Similarly, the Dutch Olympic Committee warned its athletes to keep their phones and laptops out of China. That's according to local media. And in the U.S., Senator Marco Rubio sent a letter to President Biden asking what his administration is doing to make sure all U.S. athletes are sufficiently protected from Beijing surveillance and manipulation. In the letter, he also raised concerns over the digital yuan, a newly released digital currency issued by the Chinese Communist regime's central bank. The currency and the virtual wallet app it uses will be available to all foreigners visiting Beijing for the Games. The trouble is, the Communist Party has the ability to track every transition made with digital yuan, prompting fears from democratic nations. Experts also suspect the new currency is part of Beijing's greater ambition to challenge the global dominance of the U.S. dollar. If that effort is successful, Beijing could gain major leverage on the international stage and use it to promote its authoritarian ideology.
British spy service MI5 has told the House of Commons Speaker that the Chinese Communist Party has been employing a woman to exert improper influence over lawmakers.
Speaker Lindsay Hoyle wrote in an email on Thursday that MI5 found the woman has been engaged in political interference activities on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party, engaging with members here at Parliament. It also said she has facilitated financial donations to serving and aspiring parliamentarians on behalf of foreign nationals based in Hong Kong and China. Hoyle said the woman had been involved with the now disbanded all-party parliamentary group Chinese in Britain. Home Secretary Priti Patel said it was deeply concerning.
And the British Prime Minister admitting he went to a garden party at number 10 Downing Street in May 2020 made all the headlines and comes on top of several scandals. He had some questions to answer about it in Parliament yesterday, but what's the public's reaction? NTD's Jane Werrell has this report.
Following the Prime Minister's apology on Wednesday, we asked your thoughts on the Downing Street garden gathering during the first lockdown.
I laughed, then I got angry, then we laughed again because everything he says is just a lie. I had colleagues that have died, I've known people that have died, I've worked through ICU. I'm not an ICU nurse, but that's where we got all redeployed to. So yeah, I'm just shocked by it all, really.
If the man who makes them can't stick to the rules, then what hope is there for him being a Prime Minister?
I haven't really spent the mental energy to think about it. That's how I feel. Call it corona fatigue.
Despite the fatigue, there's a general sense of frustration and anger from many people.
Well, you don't need somebody to tell you whether you've been at a party or not. You don't need that, do you? So, I mean, he's, as I say, he's shameless, but he shames the country.
My brother's a doctor. He's working on a COVID ward, and whilst they were working so hard, crying, not even getting paid much, just getting clapped as a return for it, they were off partying. It just doesn't make sense.
One word is disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful. So why can they do it? We can't.
Perhaps we can stop all this, what we call traction, or all this, blah blah, and get on with what the job needs to do. And if he needs to look at himself seriously in a mirror and say, well, maybe I need to own up to some of those responsibilities, and maybe that's a way of going forward.
This man, though, isn't bothered and thinks Boris Johnson should stay.
It's a business meeting, wasn't it? He's running the country. The guy's got to be meeting people and doing his job. It's an important, It's a major stressful time. I run my own business. We had business meetings, cheese and wine, that was included. So yeah, nothing wrong with it.
So you don't think Boris Johnson should resign for this?
Definitely not. Definitely not. The guy's done a sterling job. Would you want his job? Because I know I wouldn't.
And resign.
Leaders of the main opposition parties have all called for him to resign, but Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross is the first senior colleague from within his own party saying he should quit. Jane Warrell, NTD News, London.
The gathering at Downing Street took place quite some time ago. We spoke to one professor who says while government officials were hypocrites to attend the party in the first place, many who want Boris Johnson to resign want stricter rules.
If you just look at Boris Johnson's attitude to lockdowns and further restrictions, are not exactly in line with the rest of Europe and other parts of the world, right? They're certainly not in line with even Scotland and Wales, who've got much tighter restrictions, okay? In fact, you have people like the Scottish and Welsh ministers, as well as people like Trudeau and Macron, have come out very recently and said, we've got to go towards mandates and vaccine mandates and more strict lockdowns and stuff like that. And actually, England has been, and Boris Johnson have been kind of like a little bit resistant of that. Now, if Boris Johnson, a lot of the people who want Boris Johnson to resign now, clearly want to have him replaced with someone who inevitably is going to take a harder line. It's going to be more in line with those other politicians. And, I think that would be an even bigger catastrophe. As bad as Boris Johnson, this government is and has been during this crisis, to move towards more restrictions and, newer and tougher vaccine mandates, that would be terrible. There was never a justification for these measures in the first place. And the fact that, the government ministers, people who should have been most at risk from not following these restrictions, weren't at all bothered by it, kind of like proves the point.
And in France, a massive teacher strike to call out the ever-changing pandemic protocols in schools. They say it's impossible to do their job well with children constantly being pulled out of classes to get tested for COVID-19. NTD correspondent David Vives has the story.
Tens of thousands of French teachers walked off the job on Thursday. They're angry with the government's COVID-19 rules. They say the government has failed to adopt a coherent policy for schools to manage the pandemic.
According to teacher union figures, 75% of teachers are taking part in the strike. It's one of the largest strikes in the educational sector for more than 50 years. 11 unions said in a joint statement that the exhaustion and the exasperation in the entire educational community have reached an unprecedented level.
Infections have surged in schools as France has set records, with close to 370,000 new daily cases, sending families scrambling to get their children tested. But teachers, parents and school directors have struggled to cope with the many twists and turns in COVID rules for schools.
C'est fatigant. This is very, very exhausting. We are at the end of our ropes. This is very hard for parents and also children.
The government said some degree of complication is the price to pay to keep schools open. The education minister is implementing new protocols that include requiring all pupils in contact with an infected person to get tested 3 times over the course of 5 days. But this is a challenge to parents, teachers and children. Moreover, the protocol has been changed several times. One protest sign at the strike reads, "The health protocol mutates faster than the virus."
There are issues with the protocol. The main problem is that it's changing all the time, and we only know about the changes by reading the news.
We call parents all the time. They take their kids to do the tests. They bring them back to us 1 hour later. Sometimes there are 3 children in a classroom. The day after there are 15, and the day after there are 7. It changes all the time. It's impossible for us to do our work.
The protocol doesn't prevent the virus from circulating. We know we have to wait 7 days for an infected person to show symptoms. Still, children are being tested each day and returned to school on the same day. It's not logical.
Some schools closed due to the strike. Others were open only for children of health workers, while some operated as normal. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
Hungary says it will make a second COVID-19 booster available to people who ask for it after consultation with a doctor.
This comes as the government says the number of daily new infections will likely hit all-time peaks over the coming weeks due to the rapid spread of Omicron, though it does not expect a similar increase in hospitalizations or deaths. Hungary follows fellow EU member Denmark, who announced yesterday it will offer a fourth jab to its most vulnerable citizens. The European Union's drug regulator expressed doubts about the need for a fourth dose, saying there was no data to support this. It warned this week of overloading the immune system.
Coming up, investors are now pouring millions of dollars into virtual real estate. The record being topped at $4.3 million, the same price as a real-life mansion. So what about the real in real estate? Stay tuned to find out more. And soon we look at onions that won't make you cry. Known as Tearless onions, they're slated to go on sale in the UK starting next week.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, CEO of MyPillow. Cancel culture has not only affected myself and MyPillow, but also millions of you out there. My employees and I want to personally thank each and every one of you for all your support. At MyPillow, we have hundreds of products now, including my new slippers, bathrobes, sleepwear, and my new beds. We are offering the best products ever for the best prices ever. For example, we have the standard size MyPillows, regularly $69.98, now only $19.98 with your promo code. Or you can get custom fit with my premium queen size MyPillows, regularly $79.98, now just $29.98. Or my king size, regularly $89.98, now just $34.98. So go to mypillow.com now and use the promo code on your screen or call the 1-800 number below to receive these exclusive offers. Thank you and God bless.
As renters are paying more than ever, investors are pouring millions of dollars into virtual land, the record being $4.3 million, the same price as a real-life mansion. So what is happening to the real in real estate? NTD's Faye Quarter takes a look.
Investors are throwing millions into real estate, not real real estate, virtual real estate.
Virtual land is basically the metaverse, which is subdivided just like the real world is into different communities.
Erin Sykes is the chief economist and real estate agent at Nest Seekers International. Though Sykes currently deals only with real real estate, she believes she could be dealing with virtual real estate in the future.
We've already seen a lot of brokerages jump onto this trend in the metaverse, which is where I think that our industry is going to evolve.
Tokens.com, a public company that invests in crypto assets, spent $2.5 million on a piece of land in Decentraland, one of many worlds in the metaverse, the same cost as a real-life mansion. Republic Realm, a virtual real estate development company, spent a record $4.3 million on a piece of land in Sandbox, another metaverse world.
A very scary time to be an investor who actually goes ahead and purchases one of these types of territories.
Amir is the CEO of Virtue Leap, a virtual reality startup that creates brain training games. Amir says we are still in the very, very early days of the metaverse.
We're going to see all sorts of shifts in the industry, in the technology, in the value proposition of what is and what isn't popular. So, I think the bets that are being played right now are quite brave.
Crypto asset manager Grayscale came out with a research report that estimated the metaverse could be a $1 trillion revenue industry. They see opportunities in advertising, social commerce, digital events, hardware, and developer-creator monetization. Faye Quarter, NTD News.
Ever cry while dicing up onions? In the UK, the process is about to get a lot less tearful. A new variety of onions is going on sale there, and they won't make home cooks weep. Let's take a look.
Unlike regular onions, you won't be getting teary-eyed when peeling and chopping these veggies, hence their title, Tearless onions. They're called Sunyons and will be sold by British retailer Waitrose from next Tuesday. It's their first time up for sale in Britain, 4 years after they were introduced in the US. But they don't look that different from regular onions.
It's a little bit of a paler skin, slightly flakier skin, so it's not quite that sort of deep brown that you would associate with a British onion. But apart from that, size and shape and everything is what you'd normally expect from a standard onion.
Pharmaceutical giant Bayer developed the Tearless onions. It took them $5 million and 24 years to crossbreed carefully selected, less pungent strains of onions. Sunyons are not genetically modified, and they become less pungent over time.
The pyruvic acid level within an onion is used to measure the strength and the pungency of an onion. These onions are a lot lower than you would normally expect in a standard onion, which would probably be about 7 or 8 on a scale of 1 to 10, whereas these are coming in at around 3.
But this new strain won't be taking over the onion market just yet. They'll only be sold at around 100 Waitrose stores.
At the moment, it's only ranged in about a third of their branches. We have potentially got some opportunity to roll it out a little bit further, depending on the success in the first week or so.
One pack of 3 Sunyons will cost 3 times that of regular onions, $1.40. For now, it's impossible to say whether Sunyons taste just like regular onions. British shoppers can soon find out for themselves.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selective videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.